Let's get started because I don't want to.
No,
Time is
no.
always of the
I'm
essence.
open. The kids got to sit here, so
Oh,
I'm
okay.
good.
Okay,
I'm
cool.
good.
Well, once again, hi, John. Thank you for
Hello.
being here. How's your movement week going?
Yes.
Has been because it's now Monday.
It's been really good. It's been a really good and busy past 5 or 6 days or so. It's really exciting just seeing more and more people come in town earlier. I think we met Wednesday, and so just having one thing to look forward to every day before the main things start kicking off on Friday. It's just been really, really exciting. So if not anything, I'm just excited for the city and the scene that more and more attention is coming here and things are getting started even earlier, which is always great.
So I know you're known to be a DJ, a producer, music teacher, music therapist, if that is the right term.
Yes.
What other profession did I miss, or is there to add to the list at this
Sure.
point?
I call myself a professional cook and an aspiring chef. So I can cook pretty great, but if I had the money to do something else in addition to music, I think it would definitely be culinary arts or maybe interior design, possibly construction, but kind of working my way from light fixtures and then eventually to build a house, maybe.
Build the house with the recording studio and the kitchen and the restaurant.
Yes, the full kitchen. Yep.
Okay, so you won't be bored ever.
No, hopefully not.
Makes sense. I also read, I just did a little bit of research as much as I could. And it says that you taught yourself how to play the piano by ear at age 4. That makes me wonder how your musical upbringing looked like. Did you grow up in a musical family that there was a piano already and people played? So, because age 4 is extremely young.
Yeah, so there was a toy blue Little Tikes keyboard that I had, and it had 8 squares that you press. Every square that you push, it made a little musical sound. And so really that was my, as I say in interviews, that was my G.I. Joe. So like anywhere I went around the house, I had that. And so while my dad was at work and my mom would need to clean, it was just myself and my older brother at the time. She would put the record player on, and then she would put the keyboard in front of me to kind of keep me occupied. So I would kind of play along with whatever record that she decided to put on. That could have been anything from Earth, Wind and Fire, Marvin Gaye, Pat Metheny, Herbie Hancock, George Duke, Chick Corea, Return to Forever, anything. And so that was kind of my early musical upbringing in terms of the things that I was hearing musically before I could even process any of it. It was just what I kind of heard. And so I remember the first song or melody that I actually knew how to play was the X-Men theme song for the cartoon. And I remember I was in 2nd or 3rd grade and I went to the music class and I could play it on the piano, but there was never any formal instruction in terms of anyone teaching me, this is a C, this is a D, this is how you put your fingers. It wasn't until I was 12 that I even knew the keys had names. So I recognized everything based off of looking at the keyboard visually and then knowing in order for me to produce this sound, I've got to go this far to the right or to the left or hit this one black key or hit these two and then that black key. And so from there, that led into my journey into formal lessons. My dad, I believe I was 14. He suggested I take keyboard lessons to learn how to read. And, being a hard-headed, knuckle-headed boy, I'm a teenager. I'm like, I don't need to learn how to read. I'm too good to know how to read. And so learn how to read. And it really helped because from then on, I went to a performing arts high school where I also played French horn and the wind symphony. And the best example I think of thinking back to that day was when Carl Craig called me to play at Carnegie Hall. And the gig was a sight reading gig. So despite how well you could play, if you couldn't read music, you couldn't do the gig. So it was very, very interesting. And I thought back to that moment where I was like, he mentioned I need to learn how to read. And if I didn't, even though I knew Carl would have been like, well, we can't use John. John can't read. So we got to get somebody else.
Oh, that's interesting. Do you want to jump into, I guess ties into my follow-up question into how did it turn into being your profession from like, teaching yourself to then becoming a professional musician? I know this is a broad question because I know it probably,
it's a great question. Before I get into the profession, I remember going to an Earth, Wind and Fire concert when I was in 7th grade. And I remember seeing their bass player, Verdine White, on stage and how excited he was playing bass. And he was just smiling the whole time and walking around. And I was like, that looks really fun. And then I found out that you get paid when you tour. And I'm like, wait a minute, these guys don't do it for free? And so not that the money was a draw. And even when I got to high school, just to be able to play a gig with our jazz combo and get paid $50, I didn't even know what a profession in music looked like. It might even be safe to say I still don't know what a profession in music looks like. I think we all kind of have these ideas about what that looks like. But Moody Man said something to me a couple of years ago that really resonated with me. And he said, John, a lot of these guys only have one door that they can go through. He said, you have multiple doors that you can go through. So don't limit yourself to just trying to do one thing. So from teaching to studio sessions to, music therapy, maybe hopefully one day somebody might hire me for a catering event, like just not being able to not just limit myself to one thing, but also going back to the Earth, Wind and Fire point, just keeping it so that it's fun and enjoyable, because there will be times that you might not get paid for it. So, and if that's the case, are you still going to do whatever it is out of love, or are you going to say no because it's not going to bring in a paycheck? So just depending on, I guess you could say how many bills you have due that month. Maybe I might say yes to a few things where I'm going to have fun, but it might not pay as much. But then I have to also consider, well, I have a wife and 2 kids, so I need to make sure that, things can properly be taken care of on that front as well.
How, as being a DJ as well, and as connected as every part of your professions is, right? I think DJs is still a little different because you necessarily don't perform music or play music, at least in your early teens. Maybe now, yes, you do. But DJing is usually done in like clubs and dark spaces, and there's dance floors involved and all the things. How did you, or when, at what part in your journey did you start DJing, and how?
Sure. So, and I would like to say 2009 or maybe even 2010, maybe 2011, I came across the DJ software Tractor. And so I would go and visit my then girlfriend, who's now my wife, where she lived in Toronto by train. And so I have these 4-hour train rides, and they could be really boring. And so I would kind of just play around with some tracks using Tractor. And then I said, well, this is kind of fun. I wouldn't call it DJing, but just, getting a sense of what the real DJs did, even though they weren't using computers. But then I would say, well, I wonder what it would be like if I could, sync up a keyboard and not just play along with it, because we were doing that with Galaxy to Galaxy and Timeline. But what if I could sequence something live and on the spot and blend it in almost as if it's a third track, but it's not, it's just a keyboard part. And so that kind of piqued my interest in terms of fusing the two, which we kind of did in the larger ensembles, but just for myself as a solo act first. And so then from there, it just kind of grew and grew until I was gifted a pair of CDJs and a mixer by Mark Flash. And so that's when I started practicing with the hardware, along with the keyboard, just to try to get a sense. And it was tough. It was tricky, just being able to become comfortable across the 4 different devices. But then comes the next part of, okay, well, you're comfortable now, so now what are you going to play? And then once you figure out what you're going to play, will people like it? Or or more importantly, will people want to dance to it? So now you got all these, there's, in my mind, there's always this thing, different things that you're always learning. Like you never, or at least for me, I never want to feel like I've gotten to a point where I've made it and I have everything figured out. Like there's always something new to learn, whether it's a piece of equipment or uh, if it's a new style of music that people are really into and you get called to play in a city or a country somewhere where they're into that. How can I fuse a little bit of maybe what they're into, but still have it be a part of who it is that I am as a musician?
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. That's it. I always think it's really interesting how the different perspective of like, or the reasons, for lack of a better word, are that made you start to DJ, and it's so different. Obviously, that's why I asked you as a already professional or young professional musician to then pick it up from your perspective. I because I don't play any instrument, unfortunately, but I'm come from a dance background, so my intention, I guess, is different. Obviously, yes, I want people to dance, but I can only imagine what your brain does when you already know every, or you understand music so differently and better when you are a musician. At least that's what I think. And then to actually, how does it feel then to, maybe that's a side question, but how does it feel to play other people's music? If you do or did maybe in the beginning, how, and I guess I can tie it into the future. How did that also influence the way you make or started making music?
It's interesting. So when I first started DJing my laptop or practicing, if you will, a lot of the music was music that I liked. A lot of it was Detroit artists. A lot of it was just whatever I could find on, I think it was Beatport back then. A lot of it was different things that I kind of acquired from other DJs, whether it was Mark Flash or Al Esther. Whenever I would burn CDs, I would kind of keep one for myself. But there was also a point where, with Timeline, Mike Banks would always push us about having our own label and making our own music. And I would tell myself, okay, well, one day I'm going to have enough music to be able to do my own set of just all original music, which now I have. But then there are also these moments where, depending on the setting or the country or the city or the party, you have to kind of switch up a little bit of what it is you're getting ready to do. I was talking to Lenny last night from Octave One, and we were just kind of having the same similar situation. And sometimes for musicians, it's harder because we can hear and we can play and do what it is that we're hearing up here. It might not always work out there on the floor. It might not work for the venue. It might not work for the party. So sometimes you have to be able to pivot and shift. And a lot of times as a musician, even I've been in other situations where as a musician, you might come in one way ready to play or do this, but then you look at the crowd and, I'm coming in ready to play all 90s R&B stuff that I'm playing with my younger bandmates. And then you come in and then it's all seniors. And so it's like, okay, well, now we got to pull out the Motown songs. Now we got to pull out maybe a jazz standard or two. Maybe we got to pull out some stuff from the 70s. So just being able to know, like, it's great to come in prepared, but then you have to come in also to know what to give. And so I think a lot of parties, festivals can be the same way. And even in like my approach with making music, sometimes I've just got ideas in my head. I'm not really sure what it's going to turn into. I just need to get the idea out and record it onto something, and then I'll maybe come back to it. A lot of times I'm really looking to make something that I know will sound good in the clubs, but also at festivals. Other times I'm like, I just want to make something with the singer and just really want to get it out, or something kind of dancey, not really knowing what the intention is. A lot of stuff I make, I just make, and then I'm not really sure how well or good, or if anybody's even going to like it. And it's not until I start seeing different people tag me in different posts and I'm like, oh, okay, they like that song. I didn't really care for that song when I made it. I just kind of made it like, oh, let me just put something, fourth track on there and then just get it out. But I feel that my job as the artist is not really to critique if I like it or not. It's just like any painter, like I like all of these older painters like Renoir or Monet. They never asked anybody, hey, do you think this painting is going to be around 500 years? It's like, no, they just did it. And it's like, I feel like painting this, or I see this, I imagine this. There's the painting. And then if you like it, great. If you don't, that's okay too, So I try and look at my music the same way, but a lot of times, especially now, I do find myself diving in a little bit more with a purpose per song. It just depends which direction is it am I going for.
Okay, that's cool. I have a question. As someone who grew up like being a trained musician eventually, right? You taught yourself, but then you also took classes and you performed like classical piano and jazz, but you're born and raised in the birthplace of techno. So I'm like, forgive me for projecting, but I'm assuming like it's something natural that's in you. But I wonder if you ever made a distinction between this is classical piano, this is jazz, and then this is electronic, this is techno, or is for you both the same? Like you see both similar or in the same way, as rather than people, they call it two different genres and two, you know.
Yeah. I bet if you took 50 to 75% of all Detroit electronic music artists who are over the age of 40, I bet you they could all tell you what instrument they played growing up. So in the Detroit public school systems and even some in the suburbs, like you had either choir or you had band. And a lot of people weren't going to sign up for choir and singing. And so the schools had these instruments that they would loan out. You know, I played trumpet in 5th grade. You know, Mike Banks plays guitar. Carl Craig plays guitar. Moody Man plays keyboard. Wajid plays keyboard. Kyle Hall plays keyboard. They might not ever mention it in these interviews, but a lot of these producers have some experience with some kind of instrument. And I think what that does is it kind of gave, or at least for me, it gives you this idea of the possibilities when making or creating music. So when you think about, you know, whenever Carl Craig or Jeff Mills or Derek may have done anything with these orchestras, you know, you might be going back to your childhood when you were in band and there were 15, 20, 30 other musicians. The music might not have been that great, but you kind of get used to, and this was something that heavily influenced my music. When I was in 11th grade, you know, playing French horn, I sat in the center of the orchestra. So I had instruments to my left, right, in front, and behind me. And so now whenever I get into the arrangements or orchestrations of music a little bit more, I'm reminded of that, just to think about other instruments, how they'll work to create this bigger picture, this bigger sound versus just, you know, some drums, claps, hi-hats, one or two instruments. And so I think that having that musical background, it definitely helps, even in the selection of what instruments you want to use, but being able to have the ear to know what kind of pairs well with something else, I think that definitely ties into the music.
Okay. I want to talk briefly about, you just mentioned earlier, you mentioned Carl Craig, then there's Galaxy to Galaxy. And I also know you work with Underground Resistance. How, again, I guess it ties into the question, like it's all one big pot of, you know, the gumbo of Detroit, so to speak. Forgive me, I'm not trying to be funny, but that's just popped into my head. How did you end up, like very young, I presume, to play with, you know, who are now called the dons of techno, like the dons of Detroit music in that sense. And then we talk about your own stuff later.
Sure. I was 23. The year was 2007. And I got a call from my knucklehead friend, Deshaun Jones. And I was doing a sound check somewhere downtown. And Deshaun was always this big dreamer and always had aspiring dreams to be on some stage in another country. And so I think either earlier that year or the year before, we did this video recording to try to submit to go play some jazz over at a club in China. It didn't work out. So when he called me, he said, "Hey, have you heard of this band called Galaxy to Galaxy?" I'm like, "No." "Have you heard of Underground Resistance?" "No." "Have you heard this guy named Mike Banks?" "No." He was like, "Well, they might have this gig coming up in Switzerland." And because I know him and he was just good for him. Sorry, Deshaun, if you watch this. I love him to death. Good for him. I'm just like, "Yeah, all right, have him call me." And so a day or two later, I got a call from Mike. And I don't know if this is rated G or not.
It's not. You can say whatever you want.
Okay. I get a call and it's like, "Yeah, if you want to travel the world playing music, then come by the building Monday at 4 p.m. If not, get the fuck on. Are you down?" And I was kind of scared. I was like, "Yes." And so I show up to the building, which is submerged, ring the doorbell. This guy with cornrows lets me in, doesn't say anything, takes me up to the second floor, sits me down at the keyboard and says, play something. Not play this song, not here's a track. Let me hear you play something. So if you pause for a minute, anybody with no musical abilities, like play something, they might ask, well, what do you want to hear? But because I had the jazz background and improvisation, play something. I'm just like, there's no time to think. I'm just like, I don't know. And so 10 seconds later, all right, go downstairs, talk to the manager about getting your passport. We start rehearsing, I think later in the week, we leave in 2 weeks. So I drove with my dad to Chicago, got my passport same day. And sure enough, here we are in 2 weeks on Lake Geneva, a couple of miles from Montreux. Our first gig was the Montreux Jazz Fest. And I'm like, every now and then I'll go back and look at my pictures and video. I'm sorry. And I'm just like, I remembered it. I'm like, yeah, call me if this is true. And sure enough, you travel the world, and I got to see all these places. And I think the reason why he said and mentioned that first is, as somebody that's 23 that never even been on an airplane before, I think that the furthest I've been to was Mississippi by car. And, he's like, yeah, you want to play around and travel the world. I'm like, really? Playing music? Really? I didn't even know that was possible. In my mind, I'm like, one day I'm going to be in LA, and I'm going to be in Chicago, and I'm going to be in New York. And then you meet these guys, and now you're country hopping. And so from there, I was like, wow, I had no idea. So I became addicted to a couple of things. I became addicted to traveling. I became more and more addicted to food. But more importantly, the fifth trip that we did, we had a show in Japan, and we were like way out in the suburbs. And I guess on a clear morning as the sun is coming up, it happened a couple of years prior in the videos on YouTube of like underground resistance playing in Japan. But like when the sun comes up, apparently you could see like Mount Fuji in the background. But I remember having breakfast that morning, and I've got a picture of the meal on one of my photo albums. But I remember that day thinking to myself, okay, I know that I now want to contribute to this rich musical legacy of what Detroit has built. Because back then, YouTube was kind of getting started. There weren't a lot, if any, documentaries online. So all of the history of techno that I got directly from the source, which was Mike, And so from then, that was in 2008. I think in 2010, I met Carl Craig through Mike. And then like Mike, like a lot of these people I met by way of Mike. And that's when I started figuring out that Mike knew all of these people. And then backtracking to Switzerland, Deshaun and I walked to this cafe the next morning after we performed, and they had the song High Tech Jazz playing on the radio. And then we were like, hey, that's us. And then one of the girls said, oh, which one of you is Mike Banks? And I was like, wait a minute. Mike said they never been here before. And I'm like, how do they know Mike? And I'm like, wait a minute, who is Galaxy to Galaxy? And I'm like, wait a minute, who is Underground? So that's when I got back home, I had to start connecting these dots. And so that was the really cool part of, almost like the equivalent of going on YouTube now, or if there were to ever be books about how his techno got started, I got to go around and meet people and ask questions, and then you figure out who another person is and say, oh, they're playing at this club on Friday. Let me go see if I can catch them, talk to them. So that was a really cool process too, of just researching my own way. And if I had questions, I would ask Mike, or if it was something he thought I should know, he would tell me. A lot of it was, stay away from that guy. Or when it comes to someone like Carl, for example, Mike's always tell me, Carl's a good guy. Like if he ever needs anything, like do it. Like Carl will take care of you. And he was right,
What a story. I did not know that.
Yep.
That's amazing. Yep. Now going forward to then, like you said, creating your own label as well, like Forever Forward.
Yes.
But then there's also if it's a project or your band, Room 131.
Yes.
I don't know which one you want to tackle first.
Sure.
Which makes more sense to you doing first, but I'm interested in both.
Yep. I'll start with the label. Forever Forward was, once I knew I liked the name. The name sounded cool. A good buddy of mine in Japan made the logo, but I wasn't quite sure how I wanted the music to sound. And it wasn't until, I think it's safe to say, 2019 or 2020, I would hear more and more people tell me that I had my own sound, which I didn't know. But I guess it kind of makes sense because I would just make the things that I was hearing in my mind without consulting others about their opinions about if I should add anything musically. It was more so, do you think this is too loud? Do you think this is too quiet? I felt pretty confident. And the reason why I felt pretty confident is because, and I was talking to Octave One about this last night, the UR boot camp, where you're not taught or trained to make music sound specifically like anything. I would think you're taught to make music that's you. And the hard part for me was just really, especially at that age, I was 23 when I first started traveling with UR, and I really didn't know who I was as a person or what it was that I felt I was called to do, or even what I could offer musically. I was just this kid who was just excited, to be able to get a call and go online and see my Delta itinerary or where it is that I'm flying next, and I'm looking up food and where I should go and eat. So the older I got, the more I said, okay, well, I'm this musician who've been trained by two world-renowned MBs, Mike Banks and Marcus Belgrave. Why not fuse your background in musicianship and jazz first, along with this electronic music that you're now doing, and then have it be where people can dance to it, but have it still be, if a musician heard it, they would want to play along with that melody or say, hey, what did you play on this as well? So that's kind of the fuse of Forever Forward, where it's this blending of not just jazz, but other styles of music, or maybe other musicians or other singers of different backgrounds, or maybe from other countries, but blending that and being able to move and push the music forward. So in maybe 17, 18, I started thinking about some of my musician friends, and I had a really good buddy that plays drums from high school. I've known him now for over 20 years or so. And I thought back to our early days when we first met in our high school band room. In the band room, I think I found an old report card, and it showed the class, and then it showed the name of the room, and the band room's name was 131. And I was like, hey, you know what? We should go by room 131. So I said, hey, Queese, I got an idea. And we started, and it wasn't that good when we started, but I knew that, the more we practiced and the more we kind of got caught for some things, we could really dial it in. And I think now, and I tell him almost every time I see him, like, you've always been my favorite drummer, even since high school. I just knew that I couldn't call you until it made sense, because you're just too good. I didn't want to call you for something that wasn't going to be worth your time. And so we laugh and we joke back and forth. But that's our, live duo group. And Marquise is just a powerhouse of a drummer. He can go hour and a half, 2 hours nonstop, and just full energy on 10 the whole time. So it's a good guy. I love him.
Back to the label real quick. Was there ever a time where you wanted, I guess, shop your music somewhere else, or was the UR boot camp so strong that you got told from the get go, like, no, we do it yourself?
I didn't really know what that looked like. Like, Mike never mentioned what it looked like to have your music shopped around to other labels. And not saying that even now I'm against it. I've done projects or releases on other labels, but I think for my music, and even with starting my label, it's just a great way to not have to be worried about a specific timeline of when it needs to be released. There's no set limit to how many copies can be pressed, which has grown to be costly. But in the same respect, it's nothing like being able to hold this finished product, and I can flip it over in the back, look at the song titles, and think about the morning, afternoon, or night I started each of these ideas with just an idea at first, and then you record it. Now I've got this finished product, and then maybe one day, if the opportunity came where I get to sit in front of someone and tell them the story of how these 4 songs came about, people would be surprised, but that's the special part of, anybody, I think, that presses vinyl. Like, once they get it, I think they know, or as Moody Man said, these are my babies. And like, because it may be a 9-month process, for you to pop one out. So that part I definitely got. But yeah, it's definitely something that I enjoy, being able to press records and have them come out, whenever I feel that it makes sense. So not being pressured by the time or anything else like that. So like my next one is going to be my album. And so I haven't done anything physically in about 2 years or so on purpose, because I really want to make sure that, it's special. Hopefully this year, because this is 10 years of Forever Forward, which I didn't even realize.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. So hopefully sometime this year.
Okay. Sticking to the, I guess, bigger topic of mentorship, I'm wondering, you've learned from Mike Banks, and then you also mentioned your other mentor in like the jazz world.
Yes, Marcus Belgrave.
Yeah. What are some of the main points of advice that you've received from them? But I also wonder if there are differences on the UR electronic side versus the jazz side, on like what, maybe not necessarily what kind of advice, but how they teach and how they pass on the advice.
Yeah. So the earliest, I just had a flashback. The earliest advice I remember Marcus Belgrave giving a group of us. So we were all high school kids, and he would take us out to perform with him locally. And I remember this one time we were getting set up, and there wasn't time to play yet. And this one kid was on drums, and he hit a cymbal or something. And then Marcus yelled, "Don't scratch." And we were all like, what does that mean? So we found out later, he said, when you're up there, you don't play anything until it's time for you to start. Like you get set up, you do whatever it is you have to do, but the show doesn't start until it's time for you to set up. So I remember that always stuck with me. So when we were with UR and we're getting set up on stage in these big festivals, because I have to break the DJ setup down, and now you got 7 guys coming on with instruments and everything. You get set up, you plug in, you don't go out into the audience trying to go shake your friend's hand that's out front. It's like, no, you step back, you wait until it's time, until Ray on drums counts everything off, then the show starts. I thought about that. I think about Mike told me when I was kind of first starting the label, he said, you want to have your logo or the artwork look good. It doesn't have to always. He said, when we had UR, we kind of did things a little bit differently. But he said, he would always joke, with myself or Carl. He said, you're a little bit more classier than, so you want to have a little bit more of a nicer look. So he said, you got the music sounds great, but sometimes people won't know that. But if you have the artwork that looks good, it might attract somebody to buy it. So he said you can have great music on there, though. And he said he's seen with some artists, they'll have this badass record and the artwork is shit. So people just walk right past it unless it's something they really know. So sometimes they don't know. But if you have something that's eye-catching, even if it draws people to pick it up, maybe they might just buy it because it looks cool. So that was one of the things I learned from Mike. Even on the personal front, whenever I book vacations now, I try to stay at a hotel that has breakfast, over in Europe, these small things you learn while on the road that you will transition into personal life, which is a great tip, because now I don't have to worry about trying to go out and find a cafe. I can just leave my room and then go downstairs and get my espresso. So, it's a number of stories from both of them though that I've learned. Financial advice, the importance of especially coming from Mike, like, not leaving Detroit, because there's just so much that I have and a lot of artists have, not just to give to Detroit or to the scene, but to keep the music continuing to come out from here, which I think is really amazing to see now, versus when I look back 10 to 12 years. Like, there's so many new and great emerging artists now. And I think that's all credit to a lot of, I'm old now, but like a lot of old guys like myself that stuck around and that, help mentor, whether it was by way of a conversation or a lesson, but to be able to see the Meftas and the Dion Jamars and, there's just some amazing artists. I'm just really glad that guys like Mike and Wajid, stuck around to be able to answer the questions from these young guys. And I think that's only going to continue as time goes forward.
Yeah, you just answered one of the questions that I had, especially, doing a week, like doing Movement Week, where there's obviously way more people from outside of Detroit here, but in general, I think more and more people are flocking to Detroit. for whatever reasons, and there's more population now again in Detroit, or more people live here again. And I'm wondering how maybe you just spoke on how great it is now, but how do you, based on all that, how do you see Detroit in 5-10 years from now? In general, but definitely obviously with music.
I hope for the artists and for the creatives, I hope a couple of different things. One, I hope it doesn't get too built up too fast. And two, I hope that we get, not for a long time, but maybe for a day or two, some more harsher weather in the winter. I find that I make my best, now might be a little bit different, but when I was at Submerge, I made my best music in the winter because the rooms were cold. It was ugly outside. You would have these weeks of overcast, gray days. You'll walk outside. I walk from my car up into the building and it's slush and just gray. There's no, it looked like there's no hope for tomorrow outside, and we're all just waiting for summer. But it's like, well, while we're waiting, you got this 3 to 4 month stretch. So are you going to wait for the birds chirping, or you want to go in and you want to make something, a little gritty to kind of play off of this ugly weather that we have? And so the weather kind of helped a lot. The environment, I think, of Detroit helps a lot. But I do think too that there's this rawness of Detroit, depending on how you like to draw your inspirations, whether it's by way of a favorite restaurant or a neighborhood you grew up in. And even if Detroit does get more and more built up, I still have my ways or neighborhoods or little pockets of spaces where I know I can go to get creative, stay for a little bit, and then gather whatever it is that I need, or even just me closing my eyes and just being able to visualize these places, and remember what it was like in 2010 when nobody was really coming here, with the exception of movement. But, Detroit really wasn't a place where you could come and visit. It was, but it really wasn't much you could do back in 2010. Whereas now, one of the best food cities in the country, so many different art installations and things to do, music all over the place from all different genres, 7 nights a week. I think that's amazing.
Let's talk about, or I would like to talk about music therapy for a second.
Sure.
It seems like, oh yeah, it makes sense. I can imagine what it is, but what exactly is it? Especially for you or what you do, and what made you become or decide to be in music therapy? Music therapy. Sure. I was going to say musical therapy, but that's not music therapy. Music therapy.
Yep. So music therapy it's an evidence-based practice where those who are properly trained, like there's a certain level of schooling and education that you have to go through, a certain level of psychology courses, biology courses, statistics, all sorts of other music therapy, coursework as well, that goes into you learning how to use music therapeutically, meaning it can be used as a way to reduce stress and anxiety. I found out during my schooling process that seniors who take up or learn a new instrument, it reduces your risk of Alzheimer's and dementia by 60%.
Here I go. I need to pick up an instrument.
And so music is the one thing that activates all 4 parts of the brain. So every this is where I get to make my speech about all the money that I spent. So your temporal, occipital, parietal, and frontal lobe, they all control different things. Some parts of the brain control vision, some control speech and motor movements. And so music is the one thing that activates all 4 parts of those things. So there was also a class that we took called Movement in Music. So when you think about your favorite song or music, you'll instantly kind of start moving without even trying to. So one of the other ways that we can use music, or that I've seen music work, is where music can be paired with, when done correctly, can be paired with physical therapy, for example. So if you hurt your arm and your physical therapist says, okay, I need you to do this for the next 5 minutes. After a minute and a half, you're just like, oh, it's so boring, it hurts. But if you got music going, what's happening is you got this consistent beat. Your mind is focusing on something other than the physical therapy, you're thinking about the lyrics, you're maybe singing along with the song, you're thinking about the words that's going to come up next. So the brain is not focused on what might be physically challenging, it's thinking about these other things. There's also, we use it as a way of procedural support in the children's hospital where I work. So for a kid that might need an IV change or if they have to get a shot, instead of them looking at this needle that's getting ready to go into their arm, if I'm there to play guitar or play keyboard, or they have this shaker, they're playing along to one of their favorite songs, they're thinking about this music. And then before they know it, they're getting the Band-Aid put on their arm and didn't even realize that the procedure is already finished, right? And then even all of us now as adults, like we all have that go-to song that instantly calms us down, or even maybe a certain playlist of music that helps us to calm down, take deep breaths. And even though we can't physically see it, maybe your Apple Watch might tell you otherwise, but your heart rate might decrease a little bit. You instantly become a little bit more relaxed. And that's one of the other ways that, that music helps you. So as a music therapist, it's a number of different ways that I use it from the hospital setting versus in a private setting. It just depends on what the general assessment, what the information is that I gather from that, and then why you're being referred to me for music therapy. So if you say, hey, John, I'm having this major issue with, my stress levels and my anxiety levels. So then from there, before I say, okay, we'll sign up and then we'll get started tomorrow. It's like, no, I need like a background about you, life, any other medications, personal, and all of that stuff. You take all that, you combine it all, you take that information. Then once I gather the personal stuff, now we get into, okay, musical preferences, musical tastes. From there, we create different goals and objectives about what it is that we want to achieve. And then when we want to achieve them by, and then you start to fine tune it a little bit more and say, okay, so in the first 2 weeks, we're going to try to work towards this, so that it becomes a thing where we've reached those goals and objectives. And then we can come back in 3 months and say, okay, it's been 3 months. Do you feel, you've gotten what you need? Or I would be able to sit with you and say, okay, so based off of everything that we've done, reviewing all of the sessions, it seems like, Mariella, your stress has gotten worse. You're working too hard. So now I feel that for the next 3 months, we've got to, do X, Y, and Z should you continue to come with music therapy. Just like physical therapy and occupational therapy, speech therapy, music, it can also do things, in my opinion, where depending on how you use it, you might not have to worry about taking a specific pill bottle or a medication that comes with, yes, it'll fix your stress and anxiety, but it also comes with these 4 side effects, 2 of which need their own 2 prescriptions. And then, so now you got 10 pill bottles for what was supposed to just be one issue, right? So music is a great way to kind of just help improve or increase the quality of life and so many other things, without having to resort to your local neighborhood pharmacist and signing up for a prescription.
Interesting. While you were explaining that, I was thinking, okay, so what is the, not difference, what makes me decide to whether I want to go to the club and dance it out versus coming to see you, right? Or is my approach of like, I need to release the stress and I'm going to go hard on the dance floor for 5 hours. Is that just a Band-Aid compared to what you do?
I wouldn't call it a Band-Aid. It could definitely help. The only thing is, as I think any therapist would say, it's hard for us to assess whether if it's a Band-Aid for you. Maybe you've got the stress out from dancing those 5 hours, but once the dancing is over, you feel fine. But then 2 hours later, the club doesn't open until the following weekend. What do you do Monday through Thursday? So one of the other things that we do is we try to teach you ways that you can use music at home for yourself, so that if we have a session once a week, every Monday, now it's Thursday, and you're just like, John's out of town or he's busy. I can't call him and see if he can fit me in tomorrow. But based off of what he showed me, I can, I've got this YouTube playlist of his favorite songs, some of the ones that I like. And so now I can just go on YouTube and listen to my playlist in the evening to kind of help since evenings are my time where, because I just got off work or the kids are all over the place, or in my instance, you find something new in the house that's got to be fixed. Okay, I need to bring myself down because I want to be able to have a good night's sleep. Let me turn on my Pat Metheny playlist, or let me just shift things a little bit so that it's not too quiet, and just play a little bit of music, which I know for myself personally, it just kind of helps to bring things down a little bit. It doesn't fix what needs to be done around the house, but at least I get to kind of take my mind off of it for a little bit to enjoy the evening before the kids go to sleep, and I got to figure, okay, so now how am I really going to fix this problem over in the other room?
Okay, that explains it.
Mhm.
I wonder how that being a music therapist
Mhm.
ties into your other professions
Mhm.
of being John Dixon.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say different professions, but I
Mhm.
feel like your number one profession is like
Music.
being John Dixon and
I agree.
doing all the
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. So the other interesting thing about music therapy is you don't have to be a good musician to be a music therapist. You have to know how to read music. You have to know how to play guitar and piano. That was a part of the coursework. I didn't play guitar. I do now. But um, just like Detroit, the more you're able to do musically, the more ways you can use music, you know? So like, for example, like when I mentioned the whole sight reading with Carl Craig, I might know Carl Craig and have played with Carl Craig, but because I took lessons and have a background in reading music, now I can also, when the time came for those gigs with Carl and the synthesizer ensemble where we had to read music, I can also do that now because of the skill set, right? So even with music therapy, there would be these times where, you know, for example, I'd be at Children's Hospital and I'm in a, patient's room and they're in the NICU, they're 3 weeks old, and I'll walk in, or, and the heart rate is a little high. I'll start playing music and you instantly see the heart rate drop. And I'm not playing a particular song. It's just all improvisation. So that improvisational aspect. And I'm sitting here watching the monitor, just getting the heart rate to slow, or if the baby's fidgety and can't really sleep and they're agitated, they're a baby. I can't say, hey man, calm down, take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. They're 3 weeks old. Right. And so that's the other amazing, powerful thing about music is there's specific ways to use music for babies that young, because you can also overstimulate them by doing too much, which is why, if you ever hear someone saying, oh yeah, I do music therapy, I go play at the senior citizens folks and I go play Smurf Wind and Fire and they dance, like, no, that's not therapy, because you can also be causing harm or danger to someone if they had a loved one who recently passed and they liked Earth, Wind, and Fire, and they can no longer hear Earth, Wind, and Fire because it brings up that traumatic experience or incident, and you don't know that because you haven't talked to them or assessed them. That's another side to it as well. But then you asked me, I'm sorry, earlier, how did I get into it? I try to tell this story when I can. It happened from a beautiful argument where my wife and we were out of town. I was visiting my best friend who's a social worker. And from this argument stemmed this day-long conversation with me, him, and her. And he mentioned music therapy and how, someone with my musical background, how it could benefit me and how I could benefit others. And like, I really didn't have any idea about how it could work, but like something in me just knew that it would and that it was meant to be. So like I found this online program where if you already have a music degree, it cuts the music therapy program into 2 years, and it was an online program. And so I said, you know what do I have to lose at this point, right? And so I enrolled in a program. 6 months later, March 2020 happened. The world shut down and you had to do everything from a computer anyway. So it was perfect timing. A buddy of mine said his dad worked at the CDC and he said, yeah, things aren't going to be normal for about 3 years. It was a 2-year program. So I'm like, so by the time I finished, and here I am.
That's very interesting. See how things usually align when you let them.
Yep.
My other question, going the other way, I wonder if you now do make music, right? Mm-hmm. Do you now, having all this, like, I guess, book knowledge about the therapy part, does that influence how you make music? In a sense of like, I can do this. Kind of weird if I think about it, like I can influence people like this if I do that.
There are these switches in my mind that I'm able to turn on and off, and it was a years long process, and it came when I first met Mike, and Mike told me that because you're a trained musician first, it's going to take you longer to understand how to make this music, because you've been trained to always do and play what's right and what should work. But now you have to train yourself to unlearn the stuff that you learned. And I was still in college when I met Mike. So I'm just like, huh? Like, what does he mean? And then I got it. And like, there's been a couple of times along my path where it kind of clicked. There's another time where I had a studio session with Carl Craig and I was working on a remix for Terrence Parker. And I was like, Carl, the song doesn't fit what the vocalist is singing. She's singing in a different key. And he was like, so what? It doesn't matter. Like, it feels good, right? And I was like, oh. And then when you think about the people on the dance floor, nobody's standing with a clipboard checking off, okay, vocalists in the right key, check keyboarders, and this is all in the right key. It's like, no, like either it sounds good or it doesn't. And so lately I've been having these ideas. I just haven't had the chance to get around to it yet, of having like an EP or maybe a 30-minute song or something where it's just slower, moodier, relaxation music. I wouldn't necessarily want to call it anything in terms of what genre it is. It would just be like relaxation volume 1, or like call it what you want, put it in whatever category you want. But for me, if I can get some enjoyment out of it, which a lot of stuff I do now, just hit record and just kind of play for 30 minutes, and I'll play it every now and then when I'm laying down, relaxing, or whatever. So I figure, why not share that with people, and then just, should you want to know how to use this or what it can do, I can give maybe a description on Bandcamp or whatever, like of how you can use this music and how you can use it to kind of help or de-stress, or you're leaving a club and your ears are ringing and you don't want to hear silence in the car because that's too loud, but you want to hear something, but without a pulse to it. It can be used that way as well.
Interesting. I wonder, now you talked about your mentors, and I wonder what you would be the first piece of advice you would give young musicians or DJs, or even, like a young John.
Mm-hmm. 2 things come to mind. One is, if you're doing it to make money, don't even try to attempt to do it, because you will be upset. If that's your main motivation, even the touring aspect, if that's your main motivation for doing it, then if you never reach it, or if it's taking too long, or it's not coming fast enough because of what you see online or social media, then you probably shouldn't be doing it anyway. So if it's the money for you that you want, it's not going to work out for you, because there will be times where there is no money. That would be one piece. Another piece of advice is to really figure out who you are as an artist. And I like to use the word artist because visual, culinary, interior design, you all are all artists. Construction, contractor, like whatever it is that's your thing, like figure out who you are and what it is you have to say visually, food-wise, musically. Once you know, I feel like once you know who you are and what it is you have to offer, paired with your passion for whatever it is, and feeling like, okay, I know I have something to say, or I know I've got this dish or this style, this take on, new Indo fusion. I know people are just going to love. Like, once you know that, okay, do it. And everything's not going to be for everybody, and that's okay. But if you do it and you stay true to it and you love it, just keep going, and then just watch what happens from there. I think that would be the advice that I would give.
What going into like looking to the next couple of years, or not even years, I don't want to put a specific time period on it, but you just mentioned your album for the 10-year anniversary. Yes. Are there any other projects that you have in the works that you are willing or want to share, or anything that even now that people need to check out, or that you think is people don't know of enough?
If you haven't heard of me, I've got all my music on Bandcamp that I've released from my label. I've also done a number of things for other labels in Detroit and around the globe. So definitely use your good friend, Mr. Google, for that. Other projects for myself, with the exception of my album, and just trying to do more music with Room 131. We've got some things coming up locally, so that's just a fun project that I really get the chance to just enjoy and be free and just, in my opinion, have a front row seat to just watching Marquise do what it is that he does for an hour and a half. I'm really excited about that and the different things that are coming up. And hopefully, I think I might venture one of these days, maybe venture into being a food critic. I would love to be a food critic, but take the Mike Banks approach, which is, I've tasted that before, or I've seen that before. What else can you make? And you're like, wait, what do you mean? This is what we do. We'll do something that I haven't seen or tasted before. And they're like, well, how do I, that's the third piece of advice I would give to the next and upcoming artists. And that's a very harsh way to hear something coming from someone that you not only look up to, but, me being 23, 24, and I've got this musical experience. What I was doing back then is I would make these tracks based off of some of the things that we were playing. And in my attempts of, this is what it means to make techno. And say, here you go, Mike, here's this track. Yeah, I heard that before. And that's it. No, go change this, go do this. I'm like, okay, let me go see what else I have or what else I can make. And for months, heard that. The moment it changed, where he was like, okay, now you're on to something. That's when we started setting up these studio sessions, which, being a submerged, it was funny because, luckily I wasn't married with kids or anything yet. So I would get done with school around 5. I would go find something to eat. 6, drive down to the studio and submerge. At 7 or 8, I'll text Mike, hey, you want to do 9? All right, cool. 9 o'clock is good. I'm like, perfect. 9 o'clock, probably go till 11. It's 9:45. I'll text Mike, hey, is 9 still good? Oh yeah, give me a couple minutes and I'll be right up. Okay, cool. Now it's 11:30. And I'm like, John, you ready? I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. So like on one of my EPs, there's this song called 1203 and 303. And so all of the studio rooms in Submerge had room numbers. And so I was in the 3rd floor in room 303, and I would instantly think about these moments where the sessions would get pushed back and back and back. And I'm like, well, I can't tell them no, because I know one day it's going to all come in handy. But then like we've been trying to plan this all week. And sometimes it'll be midnight. Like, hey, John, I can't do it. I'm like, why didn't you tell me 3-4 hours ago? I'm here waiting. I could have been on home sleep. But the other thing about that room is before, I was telling somebody the other night, before I moved into that room, Gerald Mitchell was in that room. And then after I left, Ariel or DJ Holographic was in that room. And then after her, Dion Jamar was in that room. So like that room specifically, 303, how rare is that, that all of these people came and went and did their time in that room. So that's a special room. I think they should open that room up and we all bring in some gear or posters or something that they'd be part of.
Yeah, do a whole
exhibit.
project based on whatever you
room.
guys experienced in that room individually.
Yeah, that would be something.
I lost my train. Oh yeah, so you just mentioned when Mike said, "Oh, I've heard this before. I've heard this before." Mm-hmm. Do you remember what you did for him to say, "Oh, okay, you're onto something"?
I stopped trying to make what I thought he wanted to hear. And something he was always a heavy advocate on was really digging into your equipment, whatever that was, and going through all of the settings, going through the things that most people overlook. Sometimes it might be a function hidden underneath this button or this tab with shift and command or whatever that people never thought about. And so I did something where I dug in. I can't remember what it was, but I remember I stopped trying to make what I thought he wanted to hear. And I started focusing on what it is I knew how to do musically, but pairing that with what this machine, which at the time was a Yamaha Motif ES, like what that keyboard could do. And so when you take what this can do combined with what the hands and the brain is able to make it do, then you're able to create something that Mike has never heard before. And that's when it was, okay, great. Now let me show you some things or some tools that you can use to help build on that, and not, okay, great. Now here's how to make a track like how I make a track. It's like, no, here, how he makes his tracks and his process is different from my process. And that was always the goal or part of the boot camp. It's not to build you to be like the sergeant or whoever's running the boot camp. It's to make you your own individual soldier to be able to go out and achieve or accomplish or do whatever it is you know how to do that, or taking the knowledge or tools that we've equipped you with to be able to do, and to stand against those people that say, I don't like your track. It's like, well, Mike didn't like my tracks either. So you telling me that it's not going to make me feel any more discouraged. I'm like, yeah, like, going back to the whole art thing, there's tons of pieces of art that I don't like, but guess where I'm looking at those pieces of art at? In a museum that I paid for to go and see. So some I like, some I don't like, and I look at music the same way. Like if one person likes one track out of 1,000 that I made, I did my job.
Cool. That's very cool. I only have 2 more questions. One, you told me this little anecdote. Is it anecdote? Anecdote.
Anecdote. Yeah.
Transcription will fix it for me.
Yeah.
Where you said you you and your wife make it a point to go out. I forgot, maybe once a month or a certain time to go out dancing.
Yep.
And you even named me the DJ that you guys like to hear. I wonder, since this podcast is called Dance to the Music, I wonder if you can name me 3 tracks that you guys like to dance to. That obviously, yeah, it can be anything. Or that you used to like to dance to, even
specific. I know that there's "And the Beat Goes On." I forget. I don't want to say I'm going to butcher the artist. I'm sorry for all the old heads.
I can't think of it either, though. I know the song. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I forget who. It's. I can see it because our kids like that song too, but can't think of the name. That would be one song. Genre specifically, like she likes the Caribbean island, Afrobeat music. I do too, as well. My kids love it. But in terms of like DJs or locally, like Kyle Hall is one of our favorites. Like anytime we see that Kyle is playing coming up, we're like, okay, let's see if we can get a babysitter so that we can, go out to hear Kyle. But the cool thing about going to check him out, and even me going out with her to dance, is there are these moments where I'll take my phone out and I'll just kind of hit record and tape the floor because I'm like getting an idea. But it reminds me of like the importance of, and I'm on the dance floor not thinking about, hey, this song is not in this key and the singer it's like, I'm not thinking like how I usually can do in the studio. Like those switches are turned off in my mind until one sneaks itself on and say, hey, idea, you should make a rhythm, and then it goes back off again because I'm supposed to be enjoying myself and not be in music mode. But that's the other cool part, is being able to be reminded of, why we're making this music. And again, we was talking with Lenny from Octave One about it last night. Like, we make dance music, and he was just talking about the importance of drums. And it's like, if people are not dancing and maybe they're doing this, but you're not you're here to dance, but you're doing this to the person that's there, something is wrong. For me, something is wrong. So when I'm calling myself making dance music, I will hope that, somebody would dance. So often what I'll do sometimes is, and I've never told my wife this, I'll put on my music as I'm kind of making it. I'll play it from my phone, and then I'll put it on and I'll see if my kids start moving. And I'll watch them.
I've heard that before, yeah.
If they don't start moving, I'm just like, okay, I got to go fix some things. If I start seeing kind of moving, or my youngest, she's always wants to see what's playing on the phone or iPad. So I got them hooked. So if they like it, then I'm off to a good start. But
kid test.
Yes, they're the most honest people. So, and they don't care about your feelings. You like this song? No. There's no, what can I fix? Is it my low end? Should I change an instrument? What? I don't like it.
It's yes or no.
Yes. Yep.
That's cool. That's very cool. My last question is more like just give you again the option to maybe speak on something that I haven't asked, or that you would like to speak more on, or like would you like people to know?
Sure. I love to eat. My weight doesn't show it. And over as I've grown as a producer and a musician and an artist, I've grown more in love with cooking, and I start to find these comparisons a lot. I would do it a lot when I would teach music. I will often refer to a food or cooking analogy before anything musically, because the majority of my students were older and they all have had some experience of cooking if they don't cook at all. And so I often think about people calling themselves, I'm a producer, and everybody's got their definitions of what a producer is or someone who makes music. And for me, I often like to think about chefs. And a really good chef, they not only know their kitchen well, but they know the food well. They know or can walk through a garden and identify oregano from basil, from spinach, from parsley to dill, and be able to know what it looks like, what it smells like, but also how to take that, how to put that with certain dishes versus I'm a chef. Oh, what do you make? And then I bring you out this plate of food, but you don't know that in the kitchen, I've got a Hungry Man frozen dinner that I got from the grocery store that I plopped on in the microwave, nuked it, put it on the plate, got some seasoning, sprinkled it, and say, here, I made this for you. It's like, did you make it, or did you just prepare it? Or did you arrange what was already created? Or, you made this, so that means you produced it. Like, where'd you get your produce from? Like, did you grow this piece of fruit, or was that frozen as well? And so, like, I love that you can't buy your way into a Michelin star chef status. You can't buy your way into having a James Beard Award. You have to know what you're doing. You got to get either pay to go to school for, or you got to have some serious culinary training. And I look at, guys like Mike or like Wajid or like Carl, you don't have to have gone to school for music to be really good at it. But if you were to ever become tested on your skill set and what it is you really know, that's what separates the chefs, the James Beard guy from the cook. I'm not that well. I can get away with some stuff, but I wouldn't tell you I can open up a restaurant like that because I can make $100K a year. So let me go open up a restaurant because I've got 5 years of making my kids the same 6 or 7 meals. And so if they like it, then the rest of the world will like it. So let me go and do that because I can get paid for it, and only to not get paid. And it's like, oh, well, there's something wrong with you all, not with me, because I know I'm good. So I often like to give that analogy because just like with music and food, I believe there's 2 types of music, just like there's 2 types of food. And that's what, Mariela?
I'm guessing good and bad.
Good and bad. Raise your hand if you've ever woken up and you've said, you know what, I want to go to that restaurant. I heard it was just all right.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I guess the other part will be there's a lot of restaurants that they have a cool vibe and the atmosphere, and it's very the what would you call it? The furniture is all nice and pretty and whatever. The food is mediocre.
It's all right.
It's not even about being bad. It's just like it's mediocre and overpriced.
Right.
We're not going for food like that.
Not me. Send me. I would go to Old Faithful. I would go to Checkers and go to the drive-thru, spend my $12, and I can have my cool vibe at home.
That part, exactly. We're not paying for the vibes.
Yeah.
Thank you. I like that analogy. Food analogies are always my thing.
We can all relate to it. Right?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you again for coming here, for taking the time. I know it's a busy week and you got family, so thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I know you mentioned Bandcamp. Where else can people find you? Probably socials and stuff.
Social media. My Instagram is, I think, is JONDIXON_. I think for those of you who still are on Facebook, I have a fan page on there as well. I think so does Room 131. But if there's anything, I'm not on Twitter anymore because it's just
neither am I.
I was never really on there anyway, and when I was, I would only post about like a gig or something. And so now I'm just like, well, if Facebook and Instagram are kind of linked, let me just post to one, then it goes to the other. But if there's SoundCloud as well, I can't remember that, but you your good friend Mr. Google can direct you to the right the right URL.
For sure. Thank you again.
My
Appreciate
pleasure.
you.
My pleasure.